Hello everyone and welcome to this Reading Boys pre-mock. This is the paper 1 review where we run through the paper. Obviously you'll have done the paper before, but we'll still talk through some of the examples and how to actually complete the questions and fill them in. We'll look at the answers together, and obviously we hope you find this useful as part of your revision process. So these are the instructions you'll be told to read through, and obviously the important one is to not open or turn over the booklet until you're told to do so. That'll be the same for all papers. You'll be given out at the beginning, but you'll have an official start to the exam. This particular paper is divided into 4 sections. At the start of each section you get given instructions. That'll explain what you have to do and often give you an example. For all of these you're going to be required to use a black pen and to answer the questions on a separate piece of paper. Now this doesn't mean that you can't actually write your working out on the booklet, and actually I would often encourage people to fill in that booklet, but your answers do need to go on the dedicated answer sheet. If you were not to fill that in, you wouldn't actually get any points. That's incredibly important. Number 5, it's possible that you may not finish all the questions, but we do want you to try and answer as many as you can. A really good bit of advice would be to skip the questions that you're not sure of and come back to them later if there's time. And if we're getting towards the end of the session, as it says here, if you can't do, don't waste time, move on. And then the final sentence, if you're not sure of an answer, choose the one you think is best. That is certainly the case as you get towards the end of a timing, that it's far better to just have a guess at any of the answers, because a blank answer is guaranteed to get 0 marks, whereas a guess may get you some points, so it's worth a punt. Finally, rough workings, we say, must be done in the booklet in the blank spaces, but not, please, and this is important, not on the answer sheet. Section 1, English Comprehension. So for this text you'll be asked to read through the passage and then answer the following 18 questions. For these they are multiple choice, and so you'll be picking from options A through D, and because you're using pen, when you highlight your oval, do make sure you're confident of your answer, because it is more difficult to change. You can't rub out the pen. If you do make a mistake and you really want to change your answer, you'll need to cross it out as shown in the bottom picture and reselect the following oval, but because you certainly can't be doing that more than once, my advice would be to go through, be confident in your answer before writing it down, and perhaps any questions you're unsure of you skip and leave to the end until you can put down your best and most confident answer. If you do find yourself making multiple mistakes, it can become very unclear very quickly. Certainly if you wanted to swap from C to A and then back to C again, at that point it becomes very unclear. So try and keep it as neat as possible. And as we mentioned before, you're welcome to underline, highlight, signpost any parts of the text as you're reading through, but don't do any marks on the answer sheet that would otherwise impact the ability of the examiner to work out what your correct answer is. Right then, on to the text. The comprehension, and what I mean by that would be to mark off as you're going through either difficult words, interesting facts, things that would make for good questions. And this is a skill you'll build up over time, but I would say that once you've done a few comprehensions, you can start to notice the kind of things they like to ask about. It might be interesting facts, it might be dates, times, places, location names. It could be if you notice good use of English, like onomatopoeia or alliteration, or good use of English in terms of strong vocabulary. Those can quite often get asked about. So you may, as you're just reading through, if you ever notice, I'm like, oh, I bet they ask a question about that, underline it or make a little mark, just so that when you're then coming back and checking, you're like, oh yeah, this was the bit about this fact, or this was the bit about this bit of history, or this was this part about this part of the story. And you can often just speed up the rate at which you're able to find the questions, and that can be really, really useful. So that's well worth doing. So again, by all means, I'd recommend actually as part of this, do give the comprehension a quick reread if you've not done so recently, just so it's fresh in your mind, and then we'll start going through the answers. And again, here is a nice long comprehension, and this was an interesting one because this was actually factual, and you'll sometimes get factual comprehensions, you'll sometimes get poem-based comprehensions, and of course sometimes you'll get story-based, and there's no way to predict what it'll be, so you do need to make sure that you're reading broadly, that you're getting familiar with all types of literature and different types of language, because they could use anything, and so you need to be prepared for whatever they throw at you. Right, let's have a look now at the questions. So, number 1, what do seahorses look like? And the answer to this was, they look like the knight in a chess game. They look like the knight, which is of course one of the chess pieces. Number 2, which body parts of the seahorse are shaped most like a horse? In this case, it's absolutely the head and the neck, the top half. In much the same way that on a chess piece, it's only the top half of the horse that's been showing the neck and head. Number 3, which creature's tail is the seahorse's compared to? Well, in the passage it's compared to a monkey, because both are used to grasp onto things and to grab and hold onto them. That's why it's mentioned as a monkey. Number 4, what does the passage mention that is the seahorse uses its tail for? In this case, it uses it to grab onto things, and in particular it sort of picks things up or holds itself in place, and so it uses it a bit like the monkey tail to grab hold of things. Number 5. In which of these would you most likely find a seahorse? Well, in this case, it's shallow, warm seas. The passage mentions how it's not a particularly strong swimmer, so it's not going to be out in deep, dark seas, and also it's a tropical fish, and the tropics are an area of warmth, so shallow, warm seas is the answer. Which of these is the best estimate in centimetres of 14 inches? Now, you may just know this answer, and you may be able to work this out yourself if you're particularly good at your unit conversions. However, it does actually say in the passage, so this might be one where I go back to the passage and I'm going to look for a reference to 14 inches. The answer was 35, that was the closest one. But if you need to go, and this is partly what I mean about sort of signposting things. For example, here it gives 0.5 to 14 inches, which it says is 1.3 to 35 centimetres. So if that's the same scale, that's how you know that 14 links to 35. And this is the kind of thing I would definitely get in the habit of doing, especially if it's a challenging question or one where there's lots of different numbers. I'd always be going back to the passage to just confirm and make sure that I've not missed anything or made any silly errors. So, number 7. Which of these statements is true about seahorses? Well, they absolutely can be a variety of colours and patterns. So they're not all the same colour, they're not only one of 3 colours, we do know what colours they are, and they don't live in the deep sea, and we do know that C is correct, so there you go, C is the only possible answer. Number 8, reading the passage carefully, which of these best defines a snout? Line 15. Again, if they give you the line number, that's often a pretty good clue that you should go back and have a look at it. And the way the line numbers work, remember, it's these numbers a lot across the left here, and so it does down here. It says the sea house has a long tube-like snout that ends in a tiny mouth. And I think the fact that it ends in a tiny mouth is a big old clue for that one, because it means it's sort of where the mouth is. In this case, it's basically the bit that comes out of their mouth and is kind of their nose, I guess you'd say. That means it's the answer B, so it's the projecting nose and mouth. So it's kind of like the nose and mouth combined. The fact that, say, the passage said mouth kind of gave that one away quite nicely. Pigs are famous for having a little snuffly snout when they go digging for things and digging around in the mud and the dirt for truffles and who knows what. I think that's all of them. Yeah, that was number 8. So number 9, they swim very slowly and stiffly. Which literary device is being used here? Well, slowly and stiffly would be an example of alliteration because you're using the same letter. So in fact, we mentioned that early, slowly and stiffly. In fact, they swim slowly and stiffly. It's SS and S, so that's definitely alliteration. And again, it's worth noting that even though in this quiz, this test, we've not gone through and done these. If you don't know what onomatopoeia is, if you're not sure what a simile, a metaphor, or an idiom is, it's important to make sure you write them down. I would actually add them to your word and meaning book as part of your learning process. So these kind of key English words, and even true of later in the test, maybe key math words, if you ever don't know them, please don't just skip them, because although E was the answer this time, these might be the answer next time. So look them up, add them to your word and meaning book, and that way you're expanding your knowledge so that next time, even if it turns out to be a simile or a metaphor, you're going to be A-OK. Number 10, how do seahorses increase or decrease their depth in water? In this case, it's about changing the amount of gas in their bodies. They have sort of like a little, they call it, I think, a swim bladder, which lets them raise and lower, a bit like inflating or deflating a balloon, and how if you're holding onto a balloon in the swimming pool, it makes you float. But if they fill their swim bladder full of air, they float more. But if they let air out, they sink more, and that way they can sort of control up or down. So it's actually not by swimming. That's the interesting fact. True of a lot of fish, actually. Number 11. What are 2 ways that a seahorse uses its natural camouflage abilities? Okay, well, for this one, it's both how they avoid getting eaten and how they catch prey themselves. Because it says they're ambush predators, so that's them using their natural camouflage to hide so they can ambush things, but also to avoid being attacked and eaten by their predators, whatever fish and large animals eat the seahorses, they can hide from those as well. That's definitely D. And last but not least, number 12, which of these is the most unusual thing about the seahorse reproductive system? Well, it's definitely that the males are the ones that actually give birth. They don't lay the eggs, but they do give birth. And that means when the babies are ready to be born, they come out of the male, essentially. So that one there. So a bit tricky between B and C, making sure the different things are, but I think that's definitely the strangest fact, and they're one of the only animals, I believe, that do that, which is very unusual. On then to 13. Why, according to the extract, would very few seahorses survive to adulthood? Now again, this is one of the things where it's really important. It's nicer than to say according to the extract, because you may know other facts about whether they are maybe prone to diseases or whether they are small or not. But it says the main reason is that once they're born, they can't go back into the protection of the pouch. So that's what the passage mentions, which means these other things might be true, but we have to go based on what the passage says, which is C. 14. The zebra seahorse, H. zebra, is native to northern Australia. Lines 49 to 50. What is the H short for there? Now, in this case, we have to read probably a bit more widely in this passage, because I think the answer is hippocampus. But let's find that in the passage and see why. So if we go to line 40 to 50, you can see here it kind of gives the pygmy seahorse, which is called Hippocampus satame. And then we've got they are generally all called the genus Hippocampus. There's the hippocampus rocking up again, and you can see the same pattern of the H. zebra. And this is a common actual method of naming it. Another one down there, look, H. glottalus. This is a common trick for naming things, and the example I would give is sort of we are Homo sapiens, so we belong to the family Homo, and we're the specific version sapiens. So when you're doing sort of scientific labelling of things, you often get like a Latinate name, and obviously Hippocampus is the Latin family to which the seahorses belong to, which is quite interesting. So there's your word Hippocampus, and they sort of then use H dot throughout for the rest of the passage whenever they're talking about the different animals. That's a tough one there, but quite a good question. And genuinely true. Number 15. Which of these is not true about humans or endangering seahorses? Well, they are being caught to sell, because it says they use them for medicine. They are accidentally being caught through fishing. Well, that's true, because they call it sort of the unintentional catch. They are having their habitats reduced. They're not, I don't think, being caught for sport. So it doesn't say any message in the passage about there being any kind of competitive seahorse catching, and they're not, seahorses are certainly not used in sport. It's not like we can ride them because they're too teeny tiny. So yeah, I think D has got to be the answer for that one. 16. What type of word is near as it's used in line 61? Again, always for these worth going back just for context to make sure, because you'll sometimes have words that can be, especially if they're used in different ways, and you might not think you know what the word near means, but actually in context it could be used for something else. So let's have a look at line 61. So habitat loss from humans, such as buildings near coastal waters. In that case, it's describing where it is. That therefore it must be a preposition. So here it is down here, a preposition for B. But again, it's always worth checking, because you never know. It could be somehow used as an adjective or who knows what. And I've certainly seen questions where this one could have been one of two options, and until you read the passage, you weren't sure what it was. So it's always worth doing. So then on to 17. What type of word is quickly as it's used in line 30? Well, again, I would always recommend going back and checking the passage. So line 30, let's find it. It's going to be somewhere in here perhaps. So the seahorse sucks it quickly into its mouth. Well, the nice thing about these ly words, we often call them we often call adverbs ly words because they describe the verb. So if you did something quickly, if you ran quickly or jumped quickly or chased after someone quickly, it's a description of a verb. So it's an adjective verb, an adverb, and that is the answer. And again, that one wasn't going to change, but possibly worth checking. Number 18, stripes resemble those of. In this context, which word is closest to resemble? Well, if something resembles something else, it means it looks like it. And I would say a mirror image of that must be something that also looks like it, because retain means keep, change obviously means change, resent means you dislike something, or reject means you say no. So none of those mean resemble, because it means look like. In this case, the actual context of the passage, which may again have been worth looking at if you needed a clue, is talking about how the stripes of the zebra fish or the zebra seahorse resemble those of a zebra. They look like a zebra, hence probably where it got its name from. Section 2, word meanings. For these, you'll be reading the word at the top and trying to match it from one of the 5 options at the bottom, and you're going to be choosing the word that means the same or nearly the same, so the closest in meaning. You might also hear this referred to as a synonym section, where you're trying to nicely match up the word meanings. You'll have 5 options and you just pick the best one. Please make sure it's the best answer, not just any answer, because if there are 2 options, the marks will go towards only the one that is the closest in meaning. In terms of actually answering mechanically, it's much like before. You're going to be shading in the correct oval, and if you do find a mistake, you'll need to cross it out and rewrite it, because you can't rub it out with a rubber, it being in pen. Let's jump into the section now. We can see here we've got diabolical. If something is diabolical, it's sort of awful, it's evil, it's horrendous. So I think here B, abysmal, is the closest in meaning. Number 2, vast. Vast means very large or very wide, so the closest here is immense, which is also very big. Number 3, incredulous. If someone is incredulous, they almost like can't believe it, they're shocked, and so disbelieving is the closest in meaning. Number 4, pompous. If someone is pompous, it means they're sort of very, well, arrogant. It means they're the opposite, I would say, of being humble. So arrogant, I've said here, is the closest answer. And they're a bit of a snob. I think that's perhaps the best way of describing it. Someone who's pompous is a snob. Number 5, elevate. If you elevate something, you go out like an elevator, you raise it up. And so in this case, I think to lift something and elevate is definitely the closest meaning. Number 6, chaos. If things are chaotic, they are not ordered, so disorder is the closest in meaning here, where things are all mixed up, jumbled up in chaos. Number 7, peril means danger. So if you are in peril, you are in danger. And so C is certainly our answer. Number 8, reticent. If you're reticent to do something, it means you're not at all keen. You don't want to, you're unconfident, you lack the will to do so. And so since gregarious means outgoing, magnificent means forward, pleasant means nice, and confident means you're keen for it, shy is the best answer. Because if someone's shy, it means they're perhaps not enthusiastic or not keen or unwilling to put themselves forward. So reticent and shy are certainly the closest two options there. Number 9, careless. If you are careless, it essentially means you don't care, you don't take your time, you're not precise, and if something is a slapdash job, it means it's a very poor quality job where you haven't really taken care. Number 10, amicable. If someone's very amicable, it means they're easy to get on with because they are friendly. They're easy to get on with, they're nice, they're companionable, they're the kind of person you would probably want to be friends with, and so E, friendly, is the closest option. On then to section 3, the mathematics section. For this section, we'll be running through the questions, and you will need to write your answer in the box. Because these are written, you will need to make sure, obviously, again, that you write it carefully and cleanly and make sure it's nice and legible. If you do find yourself making a mistake, you'll have to cross out and write the correct answer above. But as before, to keep things clear, try please to keep your handwriting as clean as possible and make sure that you're not doing multiple changes. One recommendation that I might have is actually to do the working out on your booklet, write your answer there, and then once you're confident, only then transfer it over, so you're not going to make to sort of do your checks perhaps before you transfer it over to the booklet. If you are going to do any sort of mental methods of checking, like seeing if it's a logical answer or doing any sort of inverse operations, that might be worthwhile, especially if you spot it as being potentially a challenging question. Let's jump into it and see what the answers are. So number 1, I have 3 items of luggage that weigh 1,034, 13.9 and 21,415 grams. What is their total weight? Well, in this case we need to obviously add them up. So we're going to add these all together. The one thing that obviously gets in the way is going to be the 13.9 kilograms. The link between kilograms and grams is that you can multiply it by 1,000 to get our answer. So I may actually just write this out as 13,900 grams. Because then everything's in grams, we can add them up without having to worry about decimals, and then once they're all added up, we can do the final conversion. So we're going to have 1,032, 13,900, and 21,415 all added together, which gives us a grand total of 36,347 grams. But of course it does ask for the final answer in kilograms, so we will have to do that final conversion where again we divide back down by 1,000 to get our answer of 36.347 kilograms, and that is the perfect answer. Another approach that would be just as valid would have been to convert them all into their decimal versions, so that would have been 1.032 grams and 21.415 grams, and add those up. And if you find it easier, that sort of involves doing, but the difference is you do have to do one conversion, then one conversion, or one conversion, or one conversion. So I'm not sure any of the methods is better, but I suppose the advantage to converting them all into decimals is once you've added, you're done. But I think they're either way is equally efficient for that one. Number 2, what is the smallest angle between the 2 clock hands at 3:30 p.m? The smallest angle between the 2 clock hands first then requires us to draw I think a clock. And there is also a well-known fact that any sort of 1 hour gap, because there are 12 hours on a clock face, and there are 360 degrees in an angle, if you divide the 360 by 12, you get your 30 degrees, and that is the value of one gap between any of them, between 1 and 2 or 2 to 1. So that, I think, is a piece of knowledge that you would either have to work out or know. I would recommend actually learning it if you can, but if not, that's how you would work it out, the angle between. And so now let's draw a picture. So if we just first off drew a clock hand facing 3, then a clock hand facing the halfway mark, because obviously 6 is 3:30, it's going to be pointing down at the 6. We're close, but of course if this here is the hour hand and it's only pointing at 3 o'clock, well at 3:30 it's actually going to be halfway between 3 and 4. So if I was doing a rough sketch, I would say my answer is something like this, where this is 3 o'clock and it's no longer quite pointing at it because it's obviously moved a little bit of the way down. 4 would be down here, 5 would be here, and 6 would be here. So if I were now to work out, I'll try and do it in a different colour. So let's make these grey and a bit skinnier. So if that is 1 hour between 6 and 5, that's another hour between 5 and 4. It's going to be then a half of an hour between 14. If I add up the number of degrees, that's going to be a 30 degrees from 6 to 5, another 30 degrees from the 5 to 4, and between the 4 and the halfway point, it's going to be 15 degrees. So I think this is going to give our total, obviously 30 plus 30 is 60, plus 15 is going to be 75. I think 75 degrees is my final answer. Number 3, how many factors of 12 are there? Well, if I do myself a little factor bug, I've got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, and the next number I would check after 3 is 4, and since I've already done 4, that means I can stop. And that means the final answer is that there are 6 factors, and so 6 is the answer. Number 4, reflect the triangle A and the x-axis to make triangle 2. So if I this here is the x-axis, it's very nicely labelled. So I need to just bring this down. So if it's going from 4, it's going to go down all the way down to -4. This one's from 4 all the way down to -4. This one's from, looks like 7, so all the way down to -7. So there's my first triangle. And this makes triangle 2, so let's label it triangle 2. And then we reflect that new triangle in the y-axis. Well, here's our y-axis. Let's do the same thing. So that's going from -4 to +4. That's going to go from -7 to +7. And that's going to go from -7 all the way down to -7 as well. So it's my new triangle. And I also know what the coordinates of the new point C. Well, point C went from here to here, and then from here to here. So the coordinates, perhaps I should have drawn that line quite the way, are going to be in blue of this bit here. So that is 4 across and -4 down. So 4 - 4 is my answer. Number 5. This is an equilateral triangle. So let's just mark that off, that all the sides are equal. So how many degrees are there in angle X? Well, a fact we need to know about any triangle is that all the triangles add up, all the angles, sorry, the interior angles add up to 180 degrees. Which means because it's equal, because it's equilateral, all the sides are equal. And if all the sides are equal, we can just do 180 divided by 3 to work out one of those sides, which is 60. And so that's actually a bit of a maths fact that you may need to know, that the angles in an equilateral triangle are 60. But again, I have shown you how you could work that out if you didn't know that. And now all we've got to do is work out what this larger angle, perhaps if I draw it in green here, if I can work out this larger angle, I'll just subtract 60 from it, and that will give me the remaining angle X. I'll get these blue bits out of the way because we don't need to know the equilateral triangle factor. Maybe I'll put that on my sketch instead. So I know that this red bit is 60. If I can work out the whole bit, well, the way I'm going to do that is spot that I have on the outside, in purple here, a 4-sided shape, a quadrilateral. And I know that all the angles in a quadrilateral add up to 360 degrees. So if I can work out what all of these are and subtract it from 360, I'll get my answer. In this corner here, that is a 90 degrees. So if I was to do 58 plus 111 plus the 90, that would be all the interior angles that we know about, which of course is going to be a total of 259. So if I subtract the angles I can see from what I have, which is 360, then I'll be left with a missing angle. And that actually gives me an answer of 101. So I now know in green, I'll write in green for clarity, for green, this angle here is 101. I know that red part of it, let's get rid of the border so we can see, that red part is equal to 60, so the remaining bit, which I'll do in blue, this little bit here, which is this value x that we're after, that must be 101 minus 60, which is 41 degrees. And that is my final answer, 41 degrees. Number 6. Jammy Dodgers come in boxes of 8, and each box costs 70 pence. Alex spends £8.40 on the biscuits. How many Jammy Dodgers does he have? Well, okay, so we know he does £8.40. And each one is 70p. So if we divide the £8.40 by 70, we'll get our answer. I think an easy way to do this would be to ignore the fact that it's in pounds, or rather to convert it into pennies. So let's make that, instead of £8.40, let's make that 840 pence. And now we can do our division. There's a really good trick for division, which is if they've both got a 0, we can pretend like they're not there. So whatever the answer is to 840 divided by 70 will be the same answer to 84 divided by 7. And 84 divided by 7 is not too challenging, because of course that's in our 12 times table, so the answer, or it's in the 7 times table as well, the answer is 12. So that means he's going to get 12 lots of the boxes. Well, each box has 8, so if we can do 12 multiplied by the 8, that's going to give us our answer. Again, hopefully you know your 12 times table, but if you don't, you could always do 10 times 8, which is 80, and then add the additional 2 sets of 8 ons, which would be 16, so 80 plus 16 is 96. And that is our final answer to this question. He has 96, of the biscuits, which is my answer. Number 7. I am looking due east. If I rotate anti-clockwise to face northwest, how many degrees have I turned through? Well, this definitely requires a sketch. Oh, let's do a nice fresh one. So here is my north, east, south, and west. I need to remember that naughty elephants squirt water, or never eat shredded wheat, or never eat soggy waffles. There's lots of lovely ways of remembering it. And so now I'm currently facing, if I do it in colour, I'm currently facing in this direction here. I'm facing due east, which is this way. So if I turn anti-clockwise, I'm turning this way to face northwest. So I've gone between here and here. And it wants to know how many angles that is. Well, first little fact that's very useful is that that is a 90 degrees, that part of the journey there. And this part of the journey is halfway, so that's going to be half of 90 degrees, so that's 45. So I think in total I want 90 plus 45 degrees, which is going to equal a total of 135 degrees that we've turned through. And that's not too bad. It's certainly a bit easier. If they'd asked us to go clockwise, it would have been the long way round, so at least it was nice of them to give us the short side. Number 8. Calculate the following. Well, this is a BIDMAS question, so BIDMAS means I have to follow and do what's in the brackets first, so this is a 30. And at this point, I think everything else is in simple addition and subtraction. So that's 19 plus 24 minus 12 plus the positive 30 minus the 4. And a very common trap or trick with BIDMAS is that once you've got just addition, you just simply work it out from left to right. So if you do 19 plus 24, then minus 12, you'll get the answer, but we can just do it in steps to make it easy. So that's going to be 43. And then you need to do minus 12. Well, 43 minus 12 is going to be 31. So we've got 31 plus 30. Well, that's going to equal 60. And then 61, excuse me. So 31 plus 30 is going to be 61. And then finally, we've got 61 minus 4, which is 57. So that's my final answer. But really, at this point, you can do it in whatever method you want. In fact, you could probably do it all at once and just get straight to the answer 57, because it is just a simple addition. So adding it up in your head as you go. But that's a really important fact about BIDMAS, and the way that I often get people to remember that is you have B for BIDMAS, I for indices, then D and M are on the same level. You can do those in any order you want. And then for A and S, add and subtract, you always have to go from left to right. That's quite an important little example, and you can see how question 8 used that trick. Number 9. On Friday, I did 3/4 of my homework. Okay, so you've done 3/4, which means you've got 1/4 left. So perhaps we'll need those. On Saturday, I completed half of what remained, so I did half of a quarter. Well, a half of a quarter is an eighth. How much was left to do on Sunday? Okay, well, so you've done 3/4, so there's 1/4 left. You've done half of that, so there's a quarter left, but that also means you haven't done half of the quarter, which is still an eighth. So actually my final answer is an eighth, and that's because you've got 1/8 plus 1/8 giving you a quarter, which is what you had to do. Now in your simplest form, 1/8 is as simple as it gets. You can't simplify that anymore. Number 10. I went to the shop and bought 3 rubbers and pencils at a total cost of £3.70. My friend went to the same shop and bought 6 rubbers and 2 pencils at a total cost of £3.40. Okay, what's the cost of 1 rubber? This is a tough one. So 3 rubbers plus 5 pencils equals £3.70. And then someone else got from the same shop, so it's going to be the same prices, 6 rubbers and 2 pencils. And that equals £3.40. For these questions, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to compare them. Unfortunately, they've got different numbers of rubbers and different numbers of pencils. But I could imagine a situation where this top person buys twice as much. And if they did that, they would be buying 6 rubbers, they would be buying 10 pencils, and that would cost them £3.70 times 2, which is obviously 7.4 or £7.40. And the reason this is useful to think about is if I now compare this top shopping trip and this bottom shopping trip, the number of rubbers they bought was the same, 6 rubbers and 6 rubbers. So the only difference is the difference in pens or pencils. So it's pencils in this case. So the difference between 10 pencils and 2 pencils is 8 pencils. And I now know that that 8 pencils is responsible for a difference in price of £7.40 and £3.40. Obviously the difference between £3.40 and £7.40 is £4. So I know that 8 pencils is worth £4. And at that point I can work out what the cost of 1 pencil is. 1 pencil is going to be 50p. And if I now know that cost, I can use that to sort of do some substitution and work out what's going on. So there's a few ways of doing it. I would probably use this bottom one. So if I now know you've got 6 rubbers and 2 pencils, well 2 pencils would have cost 50p. So that means I know that 6 rubbers would only cost £3.40 minus the 2 50p's that we had to spend on the 2 pencils. So 6 rubbers is going to be equal to £2.40. And if 6 rubbers equals £2.40, I can divide both sides by 6 to work out the cost of 1 rubber, and 24 or £2.40, whichever easy way is to do it, would either be 4 or 40, so I know the cost is 40p. Now, although that is a tough question, it does have one saving grace, which is actually quite easy to check, because if you did go through now and work out what 6 times 40 plus 2 times 50 is, you will check that it does get back to £3.40, and the same if you did the 3 rubbers and 5 pencils, it gets back to £3.70, because 5 times 50 is £2.50, plus the £1.20 from the 340s, and that does in fact give you the answer. So that's a nice way of doing it. Again, if you did trial and error it, that's another totally appropriate way for working out this question, but that's it. And again, because it wants to cost of 1 rubber, don't forget that this is actually our answer, although you needed to work out the pencil. The answer is 40p, because that's what the question answers, so make sure you write down the 40p. On then to section 4, word form. Read carefully the sentences below. There'll be a missing word, and you need to fill in the missing word to make the sentence make as much sense as possible. So nice and logical. One tip is always to read both before and after, because that avoids any silly mistakes creeping in. And once you've got your answer, obviously shade in the correct circle. So, number 1, we had a something time at the football match. We had an amazing time at the football match. So C is our answer for this first one. Number 2, I finally decided to something the clothes in my wardrobe. I finally decided to sort. Of course, this is spelled in D, as in to sort out, not searched kind of sort, which is option A. Number 3, on this something occasion, I am happy to dress formally. Formally means like nicely, in a tuxedo or a suit or an outfit that you'd go to a wedding in, perhaps. So on this probably is going to be particular occasion, because spectacle or perpendicular doesn't make sense. So yeah, on this particular occasion, I am happy to dress formally. So again, probably some kind of wedding or some such, where it's important to dress nicely. Number 4, I finally got something on what had happened when I read the police statement. I finally got some clarity on what happened when I read the police station. So the police statement is like a summary of what happened, and clarity means you now understand. So he's read the report and now he's clear exactly what happened. Number 5, the something traffic made us really late. Well, it's obviously going to be severe or important. So it's going to be the only one that makes sense is diabolical traffic. Diabolical means really bad. So the diabolical traffic made it really late. So the really terrible traffic made us really late. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So option C for this one. Number 6, the comedian did a hilarious something of the celebrity. Well, probably an impression. So comedians sometimes imitate things to be funny. So an imitation is the same thing as an impression. It's a bit like doing a voice of a celebrity. Number 7, I hired the most impressive something that I met. Well, a candidate is someone who's searching for a job. So to hire the most impressive candidate means they have hired the best person for the job, which is always a good idea. Number 8, I no longer wished to have any something with my old friend. Well, I no longer wanted to have any association. Does make sense. So it's a sad sentence. It means I no longer wanted to hang out. If you associate with someone, it means you spend time with them. So I no longer wish to have any association with my old friend. It means you don't want to be friends anymore, essentially. Number 9, nobody volunteered something, one brave soul. Well, nobody volunteered except one brave soul, except for one brave person, which is this one here. Not, of course, going for the wrong spelling. Number 10. The day was something by bad weather. Well, if something is marred by bad weather, it means marked. Now, ruin is close, but it would have to say the day was ruined. And marred is in the correct tense, which is why that's a better option. So the day was marred by the bad weather. Number 11. Tomorrow I am something forward to going to the beach. I am looking forward to going to the beach. Definitely. Number 12. They were something at not being picked to perform in the play. They were, well, you're probably not going to be very happy. So I think distraught, which means really sad, really upset at not being picked to perform in the play. They were absolutely distraught. 13. The company put in place a something plan in case anything went wrong. Well, a contingency plan is what you follow in case you need to do it. It kind of means like a backup plan. So the company put in place a backup plan. Well, that's what a contingency is, a backup plan. 14. The building was very something and could even withstand a tornado. Well, if it's going to withstand a tornado, it has to be very strong. So the word here that means strong, I think, is robust. So the building was very robust. That means tough, strong, not going to fall over, and could even withstand a tornado. I think that makes sense. Right, everyone, that's the end of this first paper review. Thank you so much for listening. And obviously, we'll go through the remaining papers in the next videos. Thanks for now.